and we'll say hello. Good afternoon to everyone who's logging in to today's conversation about Regenerate Milwaukee, Regenerate the Midwest, Regenerate the Western Great Lakes, however you want to think about it. We've got a couple of us here today, Autumn and myself and Danielle, and we're going to do just a little bit of introductions. And we decided we're still trying to figure out how to right size the amount of effort that we're putting into organizing and it doesn't have to be a breakneck pace. It can be, you know, a joyful collection of events and conversations. And it doesn't have to be stressful. So anyway, a couple of weeks ago, perhaps with conversations with Tiffany and Danielle, we were just like, this is a lot. And we need to, maybe not meet every week and instead meet once a month, which is today's meeting, to talk about planning for events in October related to some of the other activities that are happening around climate solutions in Milwaukee. Um, and then there will also be a monthly meetup where we just network and talk about whatever projects that are going on in that we're aware of. Danielle and I and Tiffany Hart, who isn't on the call today but might jump in, have sort of been the core little conversation people for the past year or so, probably a little longer than that. It kind of blurs together. And we've sort of committed to like, okay, we're going to put, energy into organizing and kind of mapping the region, but then also trying to figure out why are we doing that or how are we doing that or is that redundant with people who are already doing things like that. And so um, ongoing conversations and also sort of right sizing the amount of effort that we're putting in and also being findable because new people like Autumn today are tuning in and wanting to find out what might be happening, how they might plug in, or might have ideas that they want to share and talk about as well too. Um, so with that, I guess maybe a little opportunity for introductions and just to say a little bit about how you're landing today. What brought you here today? Autumn, would you mind?
Yeah, no problem. Can y'all hear me? I've had some microphone challenges. Okay, sweet. So I am the soil health specialist and ag educator with Calumet County. I'm a county sort of sponsored ag agent, so I do the work of an extension agent through the county land and water department. I some in the county government world, I am new in my role. It's been about a year and a half. In the nonprofit world, I think that's kind of old hat. So, year and a half into my role, and sort of this industry. I do a lot of work with farmers. I had been working on a climate smart grant when those got axed. But I do other sort of cost share implementation for cover crops and no-till, so low disturbance, cropping practices. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much me. I also, because I am the ag agent, I also do outreach to residential landowners and, the hobby farmers, pretty much anybody who's doing any land management. So it's a pretty broad, open-ended position. And we're, slowly adapting to changes in funding, changes in the sort of ecological landscape generally. So outreach.
Wow, fantastic. I'm so glad you've joined us here today, Autumn, and I hope this is the beginning of many conversations and connections with you. Danielle, do you want to say a little bit?
Sure. Danielle Johnson. I'm in DeKalb, Illinois. Um, Currently unemployed, but working on what's this idea of something called the meta crisis, which is basically kind of all the different drivers of the current state that we're in and how to, um, yeah, look at future culture. um, my background is in psychology and adult development, so I'm really interested in like training the leaders of the future to kind of work on regenerative projects. training people in a way that like includes wisdom and um, developing leaders in a way that doesn't keep perpetuating the same problems that we have. So, yeah, that's where my background is. And yeah, I met Tiffany in that space and she brought me into this group. And so I've been working for a little over a year now to look at what we can do in the Midwest to connect people and um, get people more involved. And yeah.
And I am trying to take notes as well. So I'm like, oh, doing the best I can. So, and I'm Karen Lemke, and Autumn and I met at the, I think, WeWiC conference, Wisconsin Women in Conservation conference a couple months ago. And Danielle and I have been working in this space. My background, I was in teacher education for a long time. I worked in different colleges and universities with different levels of education, including something called developmental education, which is about supporting people who have been accepted to colleges but need help with reading, writing, and math skills. And so I developed a lot of different kinds of programming and service learning and project-based learning and all sorts of things. And was also organizing in the local, what we were calling the local food space about 15 years ago. And that has evolved for me to be thinking more in terms of bioregional organizing and thinking about restorations at the watershed scale, the idea of using permaculture and um, syntropic agroforestry and things to make soil healthier than it was yesterday. Like using traditional indigenous knowledge and practices, which I think of the permaculture principles as kind of a nice shorthand for tapping into ideas about producing no waste and valuing the margin and obtaining a yield and collecting and storing energy and these kind of pithy ideas. And so I'm working on different kinds of storytelling, climate storytelling to help inspire people to like decolonize their imaginations about what's possible for the future. Um, and kind of curating stories of rupture and resilience and reconciliation. I'm getting ready to tell some stories this Friday at the event, the Wisconsin Women in Conservation event about sturgeon fish in the Milwaukee river system here, and sort of the 170-year history of how, of course, there were sturgeon here, 200 years ago, and then we polluted things really badly. But we did, the EPA got involved and we created an area of concern and we cleaned it up enough that sturgeon are starting to return into the watersheds. So telling stories not only about like fish and other creatures that non-human elements that have undergone sort of that rupture and reconciliation storyline, but also our human interpersonal connections. I'm thoughtful about rupture and reconciliation and how kind of doing the internal work of figuring out like our wounds and our traumas and the ways that we're interacting in the current systems, how we can kind of develop the capacities to do better through this transition. So that's a little bit about what's on my mind these days. And as I said, today is an opportunity to kind of talk about the work that we're putting together to organize some events October 18th and 19th, and the days on either side of that as a second annual Regenerate MKE event, but also to expand it into, well, I think of it as sort of telling stories about what people are already doing that connect this part of the world. And I'm starting to like curate these stories that have a happy ending. They're like climate stories that don't end in like, and therefore, we've overshot and we're all going to die. Because, well, yeah, I mean, a lot of that is true, but like whoever is surviving, if they're able to, this is a little roadmap of what's going right in the world and how we can amplify that. So now I really need to open up the shared document that we created a while ago for taking notes on this. And so I'm going to do that. And I need to do one thing at a time. So I'm going to be quiet for a second here as I try to find it. Um, Notes for regen meetings. Okay. So I want to make, I'm going to throw that in there too. So this Google Doc is a document that we started a couple months ago, I think. And I'm going to, for keeping note, kind of just starting to keep track of this. I'm going to drop another link in here because I was just playing around with it earlier today, which is the Regenerate MKE blog, which is where I've been trying to keep a, a calendar of things that I know that are happening in this part of the world. And then I'm going to drop one more document in here, which is the let's see if I can find that one. Hmm. This document. Okay. Okay. It doesn't look like it's got anything helpful in it. There's this one. There was this one. And then the blog. Okay. Um, so near the let me just start with the one that I'm sharing on the screen here, the October 18th, 19th planning. And I want to throw in a couple of things that I uh, have. Do you all have permission to type or in here too? Anyone with the link can access. Let me change that. Anyone with the link can also, oh, can be an editor. Okay. Um, so let me just catch myself up and share with you what I've learned in the past little bit. So one thing is October 20th and 21st is the Midwest Climate Resilience Conference will be held in Milwaukee. It's sponsored by the University of Minnesota. Um, Also, October 20th is like an urban ag, regenerative ag in Milwaukee conference. And then also October 16th is World Food Day. And the city of Milwaukee is going to be doing something for that. The Eco Office, the Environmental Collaboration Office, has some activities. And I spoke with Andy Shaka, who is a program coordinator for the city of Milwaukee's Eco Office. And she's looking at like if the city if that office can kind of co-sponsor some activities in that time frame as well. But they already have on their calendar doing some activities for the World Food Day. Um, and October 18th and 19th are the 2 days that I've been having in mind, basically because they're one calendar year after the street fair that we held last October. But it doesn't have to be called Regenerate MKE. It doesn't have to be a street fair. It doesn't, it can be anything. Um, and I've been starting to kind of re reactivate the people who were involved in the Milwaukee area last year, and I'm having different meetings and connecting with some other organizations in the city, anticipating this work for this October. So these are the 2 days that I've held open, but I'm thoughtful of reality, and if there are other opportunities to amplify the work that other people are doing during this time frame. I don't want to compete with them. I want to cooperate with them and, kind of build a coherent 3 or 4 or 5 days or something that are offered as maybe a pre-conference or an unconference to the scheduled Midwest Climate Resilience Conference, and also an opportunity to kind of show off, hey, here's what we're doing in the city of Milwaukee. And again, that was my connection with the Eco Office to say, the sky's the limit. We can talk about the bioswales in the rain gardens that are on city property. We can talk about Havenwood State Forest, which is a state forest within the city limits that uh, kind of functions as a big sponge during water events, and has indigenous history as a way, as sort of a land back story. Again, another kind of regenerative story. It was, I mean, it's been a lot of different things, including a prison and a prison farm and a missile, army base kind of place, and it has been given back to the people and is now, um, it's not, fully land back in the sense of it being, completely under ownership and stewardship of native local tribes, but it is a state-owned property that is managed in a regenerative way in terms of, practicing forestry, which I don't know. I don't know a lot about the science of it, but I include that as an example of a regenerative story. Uh, I don't know. Do we have, and it's still really early. Danielle and I had sort of realized that maybe in these first meetings, it might just be her and I kind of visiting and talking about what's on our mind. And so maybe that's kind of what we do, for the next few minutes here. If you want to react to anything I've said, or if any of this resonates or whatever.
A couple things came up for me, or that I'm thinking about as part of the process. And sorry, they're mowing the lawn outside, so it gets a little loud. Um, One is about the name. Like that feels like something we should just pick soon so we can at least start talking about it in a way that's coherent. Um, I like the Regen name. You've connected so much with the design school, and so there's a lot of connection there. That word to me feels very much like the world we're trying to create. You've already done one last year. Um, so yeah, I'm okay. Like that feels like a good choice to stick with that for me, as my opinion. And then yeah, the other thing I'm kind of thinking about is how to distinguish ourselves from the things on either side. Like you don't just want to be like, or maybe we do want to be just an outdoor version of the Midwest Climate Resilience Conference. You know what I mean? But what is that and how are we different? And then what is happening on World Food Day and how not only how do we distinguish ourselves, but how do we kind of create a bridge too? How do we keep that energy? So I'd love to, I guess I can go to the websites, learn more about the things on either end. And I know, Karen, you've been talking to a lot of people about those things. So that's what I'm curious about is how to be different, but in service to the bookend events.
So I'm new here. I don't want to just interject and say a whole bunch of opinions when I haven't done the groundwork. But I guess my question, as someone new learning about y'all's work, do you mostly focus on Milwaukee?
Uh, I live in Milwaukee, and so when I started organizing this way, I thought the biggest bite-sized chunk I could think of would be
Right.
like the watershed that I live in.
Yeah, totally.
And I technically live in the Kinnickinnick River, which is like a, you know, there are three rivers that join in the city of Milwaukee, at the Milwaukee Basin. And the tension that Danielle is kind of referencing is like, what are we Regen Midwest? Are we Upper Mississippi? Are we the Western Great Lakes? How big or small do we zoom in to address this? And when I happen to have picked that, I mean, the October 18th, 19th weekend, I just picked it again because it's a calendar year anniversary. But then I noticed that this other conference, I had attended another Midwest climate conference a few months in February, sorry, in May in Madison,
Hmm.
and started seeing the that academic spaces that are talking about climate resilience that are networked with, like Mandela Barnes is the person who kicked off the Midwest climate summits that started meeting, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. This is like the third one of those. And so I'm trying to tap into existing things that are already working. And that, again, like when I learned about Wisconsin women in conservation, I was like, yes, these people are doing some interesting things and they've got some energy going. They've got some brave conversations that are happening in space, in rural spaces in purple counties where, people are very red or very blue or very,
Hmm.
even within the same family having a lot of different ideas. And some of them, might have the openings to talking about conservation or um, flyways. I'm at the Midwest event. I met a person who's working with the foundation to develop. Well, we formed a little committee to do a pilot for biodiversity credits in along flyways in Wisconsin and see if we could do some mapping related to people adopting conservation practices that are helpful to certain kinds of birds and having metrics and things that can show the impact of more birds are landing in these properties because of autumn. This probably is right up your alley kind of thing. And maybe you're interested in that as well. But uh, I'm just trying to sort of put myself in different places where there might be people who are already having sort of climate forward conversations, maybe talking about collapse, maybe thinking about, some of the the social issues that I think Danielle is was speaking about, earlier, and being able to do some resiliency planning and anyway, so the long answer is I've been talking about Milwaukee, but when we started connecting across, more than just Tiffany and I, of course, we're talking about maybe a bigger footprint.
Thanks for clarifying. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think how I feel like right now is Karen has a lot of energy for this. Like I view Karen as the source of this, and so since Karen's in Milwaukee, that is where a lot of the action has taken place. And I know Tiffany's kind of mapping this bigger Milwaukee area, and I've been sort of not as hardcore as Tiffany, but mapping the DeKalb, Chicagoland thing, but not really into Chicago because I feel like there's a lot of work being done in the city of Chicago and the suburbs in that area already. But yeah, kind of looking at outer suburbs, farmland area. Yeah. So whether that becomes Midwest or Chicagoland, I think that's still evolving. But um,
And I'm going to throw something else just because why not throw even more complexity into it? But so the event I'm doing this Friday, I'm thinking of as like a mini immersion, people getting together and in person to talk about stuff. And I Danielle knows this, but earlier this year I had a chance to go to Barichara, Colombia to look at some examples of like permaculture farming and syntropic agroforestry and the way that they are regenerating streams and being human beavers and things like that, to work on water quality um, and organizing even a financial ecosystem to help funding work its way towards projects that on the ground that are demonstrably um, you might think of it in terms of soil carbon, but also doing the kinds of uh, practices that enrich. I mean, I think literally the soil, but metaphorically enrich our communities with more resilience, more democratic processes, more participation, more, you know, uh, accountability and transparency and a sense of reciprocity built into the system so that we can kind of get past some of the um, what I see as brokenness and in the ways that we protect people who are polluting from having to experience the consequences of like the social consequences or the accountability because of our current ways of thinking of ownership or privacy that what I'm trying to talk about is one of the conversations that came up in the biocredits meeting last week that just is still sort of irking me is here we are, a group of people who met at a climate conference talking about biodiversity credits and being able to map some uh, a map of who's doing great things in at the county level, and they decided on Dane County because they already had partners in county government and whatnot for this pilot proof of concept pilot. And when we talked about mapping, there was this sort of like, oh, we can't, we can't talk about people who aren't doing conservation practices. And I was like, I don't, that doesn't feel great. Like we can, maybe just have it grayed out or something. And they're like, no, people can figure out who's there and what's, and I was like, I don't know how to make a map if you can't talk about all the elements in the space. And I just had this kind of funny feeling like, I don't know if I want to work on a project that I mean, I understand the rationale. The person who works in county government was saying, I need to keep my lines of communication open with some people who have different political views, and especially under this current political situation, I need to be careful. I need to, keep lines of communication open by not offending or um, uh, yeah, I don't, I'm not sure exactly the language that he was using, but I understood his rationale, but um, I'm getting off subject. Anyway, that's something that's been on my mind, and anyway, I've started also thinking about mobile immersions, which is to say visiting different places, seeing, going to DeKalb, going to Calumet County, going to, like these Wisconsin women in conservation potlucks that are all over the state that are showcasing farms that are doing different kinds of soil health practices or no-till or whatever.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot. I like WeWit quite a bit, and I was really, I mean, before their funding was paused, I was really hoping to bring them over. But there's never been a WeWick event in our area in Northeast Wisconsin. And we are a very traditional county. We're a very old-fashioned county. People prefer to get things in the mail, even to email, and sometimes not even phone calls. Um, so I have trouble getting folks to leave very far. Like I have a radius kind of the counties that touch us, and that's about as far as I can get people to go. But I've sort of been trying to make it a priority to bring things to us because we are so rural. Um, I'm I I'm not trying to push you any direction as you work on sort of defining your group, because again, I'm super new, so I don't need to be telling anybody how to do anything. But um for our part, for my part, as a county employee, way out in the corner where nobody really goes, there isn't as much, um, there aren't as many, like permaculture farms. We don't really have many grazing operations. Like we don't have as much of that. So we have very few things to showcase and very few groups showcasing them. So my sort of goal has been to sort of drag more things this direction to kind of like bring things to the people. If I can't bring the people out of the county, I'll bring things to them. So I don't know, not saying you have to do an event in Calumet County by any means, but I will say vouching for the sort of rural county perspective, I do think if you ever decide to do some of those more like mobile on-site events, I do think that could be really, really valuable, even if y'all are mostly a Milwaukee-based organization by any means.
I would, yeah, I would do that. I would come up to Calumet County, and I mean, if there was something that could bring to you
Yeah, if we could find anyone.
well, I'll also say that I had a meeting with someone from More Perfect Union, which is a veteran-led organization, military veteran-led organization that talks about bridging, you know, seeking unity in these, different kinds of conversations. And I met Naomi at the I'm sorry, the Rural Urban Flow event that was in Milwaukee a couple weeks ago, where they brought a busload of people from Toronto County, Prairie du Sac area, Sauk County area um, to look at different urban ag contexts here. We toured the Kinship Farm, which is tied to food. what was a food bank that kind of turned into a community food center that has greenhouses, and it's related to Will Allen's work with Growing Power that was about 15 years ago in this space, and rising from the ashes of other organizations. But we visited a couple of community gardens and different projects that are happening in Milwaukee, and it was just kind of an early in the day. There was a question that kind of sounded a little racist to me about I think, sort of fears about crime in the city of Milwaukee. And by the end of the day, I felt like there was a little more kind of connection among the people who had come from out of town, and got to meet, a lot of people in who had come from all over, and were in these different urban settings talking about things. So um when I spoke to Naomi, she's hiring people to do to host like conversations and things that are she gave a little example of like an icebreaker where people talk to their neighbors at this potluck event that was, very similar to what we had a lot of overlap with the WeWick kind of model. And even in like 10 or 20 minutes, getting to sit with someone new, and kind of talk about what your common ground is, and just building that very kind of mycelial relationship on the one conversation at a time sort of scale. So let's talk about whether or not we work with that other entity. If there's some way that there the county fair, I know, is probably happening later in August, or when the county fairs happen. And if there were something, if you wanted me to bring a table, if there was something that made sense, I'm down. But
Yeah, that's a good, I will think about that. I guess I'd be curious because I think the pathway for that would be I would probably reach out to our fair board and say, "Hey, I've been chatting with somebody who would like to come to our fair. Um, if you would be able to let me know sort of like just a one or two line elevator pitch that I could give them." I'm sure they would say yes. It's just a matter of is there enough room on the fairgrounds for another table? Because we have like buildings that they put everything in. Or do you want to be outside? I guess that'd probably be fine. But um
yeah,
yeah, that would be really interesting. I think that could be valuable because it's good for the landscape to have many sort of opinions and actors. And I think this perspective may be one that is lacking.
and I can share that I put together a poster session that I gave at the event in May that was based on the permaculture design course that I took last year and this year, like my final project. And what it was this kind of climate storytelling, and talking about sturgeon, and talking about the permaculture clock that has it's just a colorful, easy to read. I can just show you the graphic. I can upload the graphic here. Um, that I have set up like a science fair, like a poster board where people can come up and talk to me about it. I mean, if you had, I mean, I've been to a couple of county fair in State Fair Park and stuff like that, where there might be, I don't know, if there's if there's kind of, but anyway, I'm setting up a couple of tables this summer for different events where I'll be at Sturgeon Fest, and I'll have this poster that just sort of talks about the permaculture principles, and using them for storytelling and imagination. And so anyway, that would probably be like my one or two sentence thing to talk about permaculture, and just use it as uh, an ev evocative, what are your permaculture stories of, the way that you relate to the land around you, and the way that, you think about legacy, or you think about, I don't know. That's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, I think that could be really interesting. I will say I don't know. We don't have a very sort of active base of, I'll say, conservationists, permaculturists. And I don't know how many people would come to the county fair and be super engaged, but I think regardless it would be good to have. I don't want to waste your time by any means, but it would be interesting if that is something you would like to try. I think it could be really cool. I was just sort of thinking generally as you guys are thinking about if you want to be regenerate Milwaukee, regenerate, Great Lakes, what region you want to look at. I think for somebody as a conservationist in a very rural county, it would almost have to come to us, I guess, is
Huh,
sort
yeah.
of the takeaway.
Well, and it occurs to me that maybe this is a WeWick table, and,
Yeah, that could be
and
great.
I can have, flyers and information about all of it because I think women's organizations play, play well in traditional conservative communities, and as an
Yeah, I
opportunity.
would love to have WeWake in the county. I think it would be super, super well received.
Well, maybe if you have some dates for your county fair, maybe
Yep,
we can reach
county's
out
fine.
to Christine Benson about getting on the calendar. I mean, she'll be here this week, and I can certainly mention it to her. But if you want to reach out to her at the county level,
Mhm.
and start, the engine moving from that perspective of like, we want to go to, and I mean, take it on the road. Ev- all August, the whole month of August is basically county fairs, and
Yeah.
we go to one this weekend, and I go to another one. I don't know. I'd be willing to um, have a table with their information, and also, oh, and here's the permaculture principles, if that's.
Hmm. Yeah, that could be really wonderful. I have written it down. I will probably email you, just yours is the email I have right now, but yeah, not to center Calumet County. I was just trying to provide this sort of
No, I love.
remote perspective here.
And we're open to, like I said, Danielle and I have just been sort of holding this space of like, okay, we said we're gonna have some event, so someone's got to show up and plan the event, and it it can look like different things, but I think certainly to the to the degree that I'm already entertaining the idea of doing mobile, you know, go putting the show on the road and going and visiting Danielle and you, and figuring out ways that we can make this more of a Regen Midwest thing, because as Danielle said, I'm really excited about what I'm doing here, but I also want to create the context for cross-pollination and mycelial, every metaphor I can think of, like knitting together our communities, and telling the story of the resilient, resilient stories in traditional conservative communities too, there's resilient stories.
Yeah, and there's absolutely an active contingency. I shouldn't have said there weren't as many conservationists. I think there's a very active sort of conservation mindset around here, mostly farmer-led groups. Um, just I think the context may be sometimes different, but I think WeWit could be a great sort of entry point. I was this close to like harassing them to come over here, and then they announced they lost funding, and I went, "Ooh, I won't bother you. Sorry." So, um,
Yeah, what I decided how I decided to respond to that announcement that they lost all their funding and they were laying off all their staff was, what little way can I at least, throw a party and feed people and
yeah.
keep the conversation going, and maybe other funding, well, because it clearly feels like the 4,000 member email list that they have, like there's some momentum of people who are, waking up to these, seeking a way to plug in that
Mhm.
feels like it's aligned with their values, aligned with, right relation to reality, and getting back into right relationship with the land, if you aren't.
Yeah, very much so. Danielle, I'm sorry. I feel like I talked quite a bit. Did
No,
so
I'm totally in like a listening space right now, so it's been perfect.
awesome.
My amount of participation is right on.
Awesome.
If so if I were to take the show on the road to DeKalb, is there something that you want me to
I
bring?
mean, you just triggered it, and so I'm going to check into the farmers market on Thursdays, and maybe we have a Regen Midwest table or something. I have a canopy and a card table. We could just go and throw something up and maybe bring some design school stuff and
We do
some
have a
regen
farmers
stuff. And
we do have a few farmers markets in the county, but that would be quite a commitment from you. I don't want to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've worked with I mean I've been a vendor at farmers markets before, and you sometimes you need to commit to, I mean, some of
Mhm.
them they're like, yeah, come and show up on whatever Saturday you want, but others are like, you need to have a reservation for the entire thing, and you need to pay it this, like, so depending on the culture of your farmers market, or but yeah, that can definitely be a great place to get the word out and network.
or maybe it's just, yeah, maybe it's just a day where we go to the food garden and we go to the farmers market and we go, you know what I mean? And just kind of,
Yeah.
we just talk about what's happening in Milwaukee and people connect.
Yeah, well, and I will go to an event in Chicago. I did register for that degrowth conference, which is new to me. But these ideas of like how do we encourage getting our consumption patterns into planetary thresholds. And so that means later in the summer, after that, I'll have a bunch of things I'll probably want to, tie in. And that it's hosted in Chicago. I don't know that it's going to be that much of an Illinois context, but it might be more broadly, I might be able to say things more broadly about the upper Midwest.
My friend Justin Carmian is going to be there.
Oh,
He
okay.
is in the northern suburbs of Chicago. So it would be cool for you guys to say hi to each other
Okay.
there.
Yeah, definitely. I will probably reach out to you like the while I'm there, and I'm like, what was that guy's name again?
He's in, yeah, and I have a meeting with him on the 24th, so but he is, yeah, trying to become a councilman and very into kind of the political
Mhm.
aspect of this stuff we're talking about and looking at, what do cities of the future look like when they're regenerative? And so he's kind of transforming a district in Chicago right now is what his project is. So
That's
Wow.
very cool.
Yeah. Well, we have a few minutes left of this hour. Are there any closing ideas, or do you want to talk about sort of what you're going to take away from today's conversation?
I guess I'll just throw something out there that it hasn't really I haven't really found a natural place for it in the conversation, but just the timing of these meetings, I am on the clock with the county, so I'm absolutely able to like attend and, plan things county related. Um, Myself personally, I would love to get involved if you guys do a Milwaukee conference or something, and my off hours, I'd be happy to like help out. But as far as like from a work perspective, I have to kind of focus county word. So my sort of contribution will be, I guess, you could say twofold or fragmented, however you want to think about it. But I have the sort of county agent role and then just myself personally.
Well, maybe I mean we did spend some of this time sort of investigating that seed of doing of me coming up to do a WeWick
Mhm.
thing. And so if this isn't going to be the best use of your time, but we work offline and coordinate with WeWick, and you
Mhm.
just get the emails or something like that. You
Yeah.
can pop in whenever it works out for you. But I do understand, and again, that's sort of the tension that we've been talking about of like, is it for everyone? Is it just for these people? Is it, how do we make
or
it
it could
useful?
be on the agenda, right? Couldn't
Yeah.
Calumet
And
County check-in be on the agenda meeting? And
Yeah,
if this
yeah.
is the place you
and
want
I
to
would
be, Autumn, I'm just
I
you
have a
know,
very supportive, my leadership here is very supportive. It's not that I won't be able to come or anything. I'm just saying, I guess the contributions you're going to get from me are going to be different based on whether I'm acting as myself personally or as sort of a representative of the county. So involved either way, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna be a little laser focused when I'm working for my job. So but that to say, on the flip side, if there is organizing to be done or planning to be done, I am also a human person with a conservation interest. So I can, help out in other ways in my personal time.
Awesome. Awesome. Danielle, do you have any closing or what you're kind of I've been thinking of how like we sort of land like little birds and then we take off after a zoom. And so I've been trying to think about, how are we landing in this space? How are we fluttering away from this space as a closing?
I've just been enjoying thinking about this, whatever it is we're planning here. And yeah, talked to Bria, and we're planning a trip up that weekend. So we'll come up and help with the event. And
In October?
yeah, and yeah, just happy to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm happy to be here too. I'm so glad I got a little chance to visit with both you, Autumn and Danielle, and that we hatched a couple little ideas here that we can follow up on, and we're still kind of feeling our way into this, but feeling positive and feeling enthusiasm and some energy moving forward.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is lovely.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for joining.
So 2 weeks, and then it's the flip flop one, right? Like it's the Regen Midwest check in.
So if you want to put on your calendar 4 weeks from today, will be another conversation where we're kind of thinking about what we're doing in October. So I have that, just get my brain on here. 16th, 30th, 7th. Oh my gosh, 16th, 30th. So the 14th, I think, will be our next kind of planning meeting. And then on the 30th, which I might have to cancel the one on the 30th, but that's more of a, I don't even know if we're still doing check-ins and stuff, but meaning for that to be more of a welcome to the space and talk about um projects that are going on in different spaces.
Sorry, I joined at the wrong time.
No, I'm glad you're here. And so we might not be meeting 2 weeks from now. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to be going on a I'm taking a boat across Lake Michigan, and then I love, like, my partner and I, we do, like, we've driven around Lake Michigan and Lake Superior, and so we're going to explore a little bit more of Huron and visit with his family that live in Central Michigan. So that week of like the 4th of July is when this is 2 weeks from now, and so I'm realizing I might cancel that one just in case it's too hard for me to host a Zoom while we're on the road. But then 4 weeks from that, we'll meet up again. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great fortnight or month, and enjoy the solstice and everything else that's going on in your lives.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks.